Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Sunday Morning Coffee Talk. I like my coffee black, if you can't tell. No sugar, no cream, nothing but beans, know what I'm saying? Alright, have you got your coffee? Alright. So today on Coffee Talk, Coffee Talk is a series where I talk about theories that I don't necessarily believe in, but I find very interesting, conspiracy theories. Last time we talked about QAnon, which ended up making its way into my regular rotation as that story heats up. But today I'd like to talk about a very interesting theory called the secret space program. Now, once again, I don't pretend to be an expert on the secret space program, and I'm not going to reveal any new information that's going to be ground shaking. So if you're already into this conspiracy, this is remedial reading, and it's just a quick summary. If you've never heard of the secret space program, take some time and dig into it because it's extremely interesting, and it's great sci-fi if nothing else. And that's kind of what I consider it to be, sci-fi. So the secret space program really revolves around a guy named Corey Goode. And he's working in conjunction with a pretty well-known guy named David Wilcock. Now, if you're familiar at all with the ancient alien theory and the Ancient Aliens television show, then you'll know who Wilcock is. He's a younger guy. He looks younger than he is, blonde-haired kid. I say kid, he's probably close to my age, but he's one of those guys that looks a lot younger than he is. He's probably in his 30s. He's probably not as old as me, I take that back. But he's definitely looks younger than he is. But they've teamed up together to tell Corey Goode's story. There's another guy out there called William Tompkins. He's unrelated, a different source who's telling the same kind of story, who claims he never heard of Corey Goode when he wrote his book and came out and started talking about his experience in the secret space program. But in Coffee Talk this morning, I would just like to kind of take you down the rabbit hole as best I can and hit the highlights. So if you're familiar with this, you may like to just listen and see my take on it. If you're not, this is going to be mind-blowing. So it kind of goes like this. Now, some of this information is, at this point, the history of this secret space program is coming from multiple sources. Admiral Byrd is an interesting source. Admiral Byrd is a famous American admiral from World War II and Navy admiral. And this guy claims he's also he was also an explorer, and he was the first one to fly across the North Pole. And in a thing called the Admiral Byrd Diary, there's an unconfirmed diary that was released after his death that he may or may not have authored, that claims when he went across the North Pole, he found a giant opening in the earth. He flew his airplane into it and discovered an inner Earth with an artificial sun and a civilization of Nordics that live there that are technologically advanced and have flying saucers. And they're the descendants of the Aryans that the Nazis talked about. So this secret space program is all tied in with the Nazis. So we all who've studied World War II know the Nazis were actively searching for secret knowledge and occultic knowledge, and they collected things like the Spear of Destiny, allegedly, and the Holy Grail and all of that. And it's actually talked about and shown in the Indiana Jones movies. So apparently the Nazis had flying saucers that they had either invented themselves or somehow colluded with alien visitors to come up with. And if you understand how we nabbed a bunch of the Nazi scientists in an operation called Operation Paperclip, where instead of hanging these people, we thought they were valuable and we took them into our system. And they're behind NASA, they're behind our these individuals were the creators of our intercontinental ballistic missile systems. And von Braun is probably the main guy. He's responsible for putting men on the moon. That's a public fact, a historical fact. He was a Nazi scientist. So, according to the secret space program theory, the Nazis involved in the super secret flying saucer stuff escaped. And they went with Hitler to South America, and specifically into a secret base in Antarctica. Now, there's been a lot of Antarctica conspiracy theory stuff on the web recently where all of these world leaders, this is fact, all these world leaders have been going down to Antarctica to see something, and they've been real hush-hush about it. And so you've got this Antarctic secret Nazi base, supposedly, and there's a lot of documentation to prove that they had something down there. But apparently these flying saucers, the Nazis had a fleet of flying saucers, and instead of staying and letting their flying saucers get all chewed up by the Allies, they split and took their toys with them and went down to Antarctica, where they started a secret civilization under the ice in Antarctica. And that while they were there, they built, instead of focusing on war and destroying other countries, they actually spent their time on interstellar spacecraft, and that they mastered this, put a base on the moon, and when our astronauts got to the moon, we encountered Nazis were already there and had a base, and that's one of the reasons we haven't been back. All very interesting stuff, but let's get to Corey Goode. So Corey Goode surfaces a few years ago with this story about a program called 20 Years and Back. Now, this is Corey Goode's story in a nutshell, and it's some crazy stuff, so try to keep up and follow along. Corey Goode claims that he was labeled as an intuitive empath or some kind of psychic by the spooks in the federal government when he was a little kid, and that he was in and out of government programming as a child. And at the age of 17, he went to bed in his home, and he woke up in a government installation, and that he'd been drafted as a secret space program astronaut, and that America, since the 1960s, working in conjunction with the Nazis down in Antarctica, had developed a massive space program. And I do find this interesting as an explanation as to why in the 70s and 80s we were constantly uncovering this corruption, where there were contractors selling toilet seats to the United States government for $200,000, and like $50,000 hammers, and all of this stuff that didn't make sense in their accounting. So apparently it was to pay for the secret space program. And apparently we have a fleet of secret spacecraft that fly all over the galaxy, and as Star Trek is happening now. And but Corey Goode claims he was nabbed out of bed at the age of 17, drafted into this 20 Years and Back program, trained on the moon, and then served in on a space station at Mars, and that he traveled all over the galaxy, and that one of his key roles was being an intermediary because of his psychic abilities between humans and aliens. And that after 20 years of service, by then being 37 years of age, that he was transported back, and back in time, 20 years back in time to the age of 17, and he wakes up in bed right where he left off, but with full memory of everything that happened. Apparently they're supposed to wipe your memory, but something screwed up with Goode, and he remembers it all. Since then, he's come out and said he did that 3 times, which would make him 77 years old, even though he's probably in his right around 40-something. But he claims the last time he came back, he stayed and started in life, raised a family, had kids, whatever, had a life. And now, after all these years, he's decided to come out and talk about it. So I do find it kind of interesting. But it's also kind of tied into what's going on with the battle of good and evil. That since all of this deep state stuff has come to light, he's tied and woven this into his story. And he claims that there's this dark alliance. Now this would go with the battle of good and evil. And it ties into the reptilian theory, which I'll do a coffee talk on sometime. But how that there's these bad aliens called the Dark Alliance that want to enslave humanity and strip the earth of its natural resources, and including humanity, and basically harvest humans and everything else. And that there's these good aliens he calls the Blue Avians, who are actually like angelic creatures who want Earth to progress normally and without interference, and that they're here always guiding us. So it's kind of the angels and demons, good versus evil, but it's all aliens. And He claims that this deep state purge that we're seeing, and this rounding up of pedophiles, and the ousting of the New World Order, and the revealing that these people in the Illuminati are devil worshippers, and they sacrifice children, and they're cannibals, and all of this stuff, and that's because they're aligned with the Dark Alliance, and that the struggle we see on Earth is there's actually a struggle in heaven as well, in the heavens, but they're aliens, not angels and demons. And but if you get a chance to check out Corey Goode's story, you've got to be patient, because I've never seen a video where he talks less than 2 hours. And he's just all over the place. He's not a great communicator, if you ask me. But his story's amazing, and the web of intricate detail. I mean, if the guy's not telling the truth, then he's one of the greatest sci-fi writers that ever lived. And he's got the kind of imaginary world that only Tolkien could have invented. But it's all about aliens and space travel and intergalactic drama and all of this cloak and dagger stuff. So, once again, this is why I don't watch regular television, because honestly, the internet and YouTube and all these characters you can find on there are way more interesting than watching reruns of Friends. And so I just stay away from the programming on television. You're being programmed. If you don't know you're being programmed, wake up. That's why they call it programming. They're programming you. So I've resisted the programming, and I've found a ton of entertaining stuff on the internet. And so, you know, that's the secret space program in a nutshell. It's backed up in a lot of ways by these images we've seen that looks like there's structures on the moon and structures on Mars. And Corey Goode claims they're all United States or Nazi installations, and that Americans are serving in the secret space program. One of the most interesting things is how when you finish the 20-year and back program, you come back and you're the same age you were when you left. Like, time starts again right where they nabbed you. And it's kind of a twist on alien abduction, except it's our government abducting you and drafting you. So, if you got the time, look into Corey Goode and David Wilcock and this new cat, William Tompkins, who was an older guy who claims he's been in it since the 50s. And yeah, open your eyes and look out. We have a secret space program. And we've been all over the world. And we are all over the galaxy. And we are not alone. We're working together side by side with alien officers. Interesting stuff. Till next time on Coffee Talk. God save the Republic.